Yes, good morning, everybody, the committee. It's Friday, March 25th. And this morning, we're gonna look at H709. And we have Carrie Jaguar from the Agency of Ag with us. And well, I believe the last time we met, we talked quite a bit in regards to the mosquito control issue. And we had a House member in visiting with us in regards to that portion of the bill. So, Carrie, you want to pick up on that? And did you have any other sections in 709 that pertained, like the hemp section or any of that pertains to your domain?
Sure. Yeah, the hemp section does, but Steve Collier's covered it, but we can go in a little more depth about where we're heading with the hemp program over the next few months. The mosquito language, I sort of chatted with you last time about where it came from, what it was trying to accomplish. I can redo that if I don't know, Senator Pearson, were you able to hear that testimony or follow up?
It was when I was watching on Zoom, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, very good.
Remind me so I know precisely what you're asking.
Yeah, no, I didn't see you in the room last time when we were talking about the mosquito stuff. So basically what's happened is
the Delta side. Yes, I was listening to that. Yeah.
okay, very good. Very good. So that's where we are. This is a bit of language that's supported by our agency, our sister agencies, and the administration. And I understand the Representative Shaw, who is a representative for the district, is not pleased with it and would like to see that language stricken. And basically, you're aware of where the agency and the administration is, but at this point, it's your call. It really won't affect the operations of the districts, whether it's there or not. It has the potential to in the future as monies get tighter, but over the last few years, they've overspent that match on the larvicide side of the program. And I'm happy
So
to.
It isn't gonna cost the district, you don't think, money?
It is not. No, it is not. Currently, the grant from the state is a total of $70,000 annually. They're required to match that grant by 25%. Last year they spent $92,000, so they almost doubled on the larvicide program. They almost doubled the grant match portion of that bill. And additionally, this district had spent $115,000 on their adulticide program. So the additional 22,000 plus the 115,000 spent on adulticide were all raised by municipal taxes, and they received 70,000 from the agency and need to match that at 25%. So 17,000 would be a match.
Chris?
So Gary, this is codifying sort of what we've already been doing. Is that a fair representation?
No, not really. No, because we've been allowing, or the statute currently allows them to match the larvicide program with adulticide activities. And because of the litigious nature of the folks in the district. The thought was to remove the state from any of the liability associated with adulticide activities.
Have you had problems with the liability issue in the past, or are you just thinking there might be some liability issues?
There are folks in the state, primarily in other agencies, who would prefer to see the adulticide activities halted.
Other agencies, what about the people that live in the district?
So the people that live in the districts are primarily behind the lawsuits that are happening. So folks that do live in the district have partnered with the law school to sue the agency of, or the Department of Environmental Conservation, first off, for allowing this to happen under the pesticide general permit that they issue. So a Clean Water Act permit gets issued to the district to allow them to discharge waste pesticide to waters of the state because of a court case that happened in 2006. So DEC was sued for issuing that permit for adulticiding to that district. That was not successful. So individuals in the district have again partnered with the law school to sue the Department of Fish and Wildlife and the Agency of Natural Resources over adulticide activities around the endangered species permit program. So with all these activities happening, it was thought that the original intent of the larvicide program as created by the legislature was to encourage those districts to focus on larvicide activities and move away from adulticide activities. To sort of further that intent, it was thought to only allow larvicide grant funds to be matched with larvicide activity. It removed the state from. Yep.
But I thought we heard testimony from, I think it was Representative Shaw, that one of the communities that's part of the area down there initially voted no and wanted to leave it, but then subsequently voted to come back in and support the use of adulticide. Am I not remembering that correctly?
The only part that isn't correct, Representative Collmore is, or Senator Collmore. Wow, sorry, I didn't mean to give you a demotion there.
Just call me Brian. I don't know.
Brian.
I'm too caught up on names.
Yeah, the only thing that was wrong is that I let the committee know that was part of my testimony. So last year, Salisbury, which is part of the Otter Creek watershed, or formerly the BLSG Mosquito Control District, they opted out of adulticide activity. So the district didn't work in Salisbury last year, even though they're part of the district. And this year at town meeting, they opted to vote back in. There are still residents down there that are opposed to this activity, but this year at town meeting, it was supported by the town that opted out last year. So they're back in for adulticide, mosquito adulticide activity.
Chris?
Can you just, I'm sort of familiar with this. My stepfather once was in Lemon Fair. He was chair of the mosquito board, I think. So I got, to understand a little bit from them, from his days there. And as I recall, they have a plane that applies some of it, and that's adulticide, right?
No, the adulticide activity isn't done in the Lemon Fair district. It's
Okay.
They only larvicide. They no longer own the plane, but the plane was used to apply larvicide, granular larvicide to water.
Okay,
The adulticide happens on their truck mounted thermal sprayers. So a truck drives down the road with a thermal fog coming out the back, and they're either synthetic pyrethroids or organophosphate insecticides. And the truck leaves a cloud 150 to 300 feet wide, so it can cover both sides, the properties on either side of the road, but doesn't go much further than that. And it's to be used in theory when the larvicide program fails, when there's a failure on the larvicide side. Currently, the Lemon Fair does all their larvicide application by hand. And the larvicide is Bacillus thuringiensis. It's the bacterial product, so it's got a less environmental toxicity to it associated with it.
and that's sprayed like in swamp, or can you just paint us a picture for how one puts larvicide out after the?
Yeah, so the larvicide is a granular product, and the Bacillus
Meaning it's like-
thuringiensis,
Sugar.
it's
salt.
granular, so it looks like cat litter. They have used cat litter in the past as a carrier for the bacteria, but primarily these days it's crushed up corn cobs.
Okay.
So corn cobs are ground to about the size of cat litter. They're coated with the bacteria and either tossed into the water. They use either boats, four-wheelers, or it's done aerially.
Okay, and then they just sprinkle a little bit in wherever it's wet.
In standing water, yep.
What happens in the swamps so that are away from, away from the buildings or away from the road, they go in there as well and. You said they have
Yes.
swine, so are they walking in or how do they deal with that?
The state 3 years ago now has purchased the district and what's called an Argo. It's like a 6-wheeled amphibious vehicle, so it's got wheels and goes on water, and that's used for both survey and application.
Anthony?
Carrie, the lawsuits, going back to the lawsuits, these people feel as if the delta-side or the larvicide are threats to human health?
Yes, yep. The mosquito control districts are under the select boards. So the select boards appoint folks to the district. So it's multiple towns that run the entity, and the governing institution over these districts are the individual select boards. And so when an individual from the town wasn't happy with the adulticide application of malathion out of the back of trucks, she approached the select board and wasn't received well there. She spoke to the district directly, wasn't received well there. So has since partnered with the law school to try and curtail the application of adulticides in the district. Currently, that's the only activity that they do that isn't done under a permit. So in the promulgation of our pesticide regulations, they will be at ICAR again on Monday. We do have an adulticide permit program established. So there's a state entity that's overseeing the activity, because the select boards weren't necessarily as responsive as we would have liked to see.
So one person caused all this?
It's a group. There is more than one.
Well, it
Um,
only takes two to be a group, I guess, nowadays. So what's?
it's true.
That changed.
Well,
Well, there's a
I'd say
pair,
a
a group would be
couple.
three,
three's a crowd, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it used to be in the old days, three.
Thank you, buddy. I still would favor striking the section 7 out. As long as there's still litigation, which is going on, and in other words, they've already filed suit once, they lost, so they went back again, and there's another suit pending. I don't know how soon, any decision might be forthcoming, but to me, it seems like we should probably wait before we strike, we don't allow the adulticide until after the court has decided, but that's my opinion.
Could I ask him another question?
Sure.
Carrie, can you, I'm not sure I agree with Senator Collmore, because I mean, I think, you know, generally, we ought to try to be moving into the more, away from the blanket application of chemicals and, you know, it sounds to me like the larvicide is a more sort of targeted application, but can you talk to us about what is kind of the risk to the state if we're, you know, maybe one of these lawsuits works, is successful, you know, if there's generally a trend away from using adulticide, I'm intrigued that the other mosquito district no longer uses it of their own volition. I mean, if that's the trend, I think we should go with it, but what I guess to help us understand what the risk is to the state potentially.
So Chris, I'm not sure, like I am a lot less risk averse than our general counsel or other lawyers in the state. And personally, I don't see a risk. We're allowing an activity that that's legal to be used as cost share for an activity that we have preference for. So the state as a whole, and the intent of the legislature was to encourage larvicide activity. And when the districts were small, all they did was adulticide. So we are funding an activity that kills mosquitoes that's more environmentally friendly than using the adulticide. As time has progressed, you know, they probably don't need to have the provision where they're matching with adulticide activity. It makes a cleaner distinction between the activities that they do. Like I said, the Lemon Fair doesn't do adulticide at all. But if someone, just because we allow that activity to be used as grant match for state dollars, I don't believe allows the state to be a decision maker in that process. So we're not decision makers on the larvicide activity or on the adulticide activity. It's just allowed to be used as match for grant dollars. Other legal counsel may provide you with a different answer, but I don't see us assuming, as a state, I don't see us assuming much of the liability. But also, you know, people disagree with me on the liability around hemp and cannabis as well.
Aren't we approving any pesticide use in the state? So aren't we already kind of on the hook in that sense?
So we are permitting other activities.
Is there any other place or not maybe place, but is there any other reason to use this other than for mosquitoes, or how widespread is that use?
It only happens in a district, which is 8 towns. Oh, that's not true. People can do this themselves. It's only done by a municipality on truck mounted sprayers in the district. You or I can go to Tractor Supply and or Walmart and buy a thermal fogger to treat our own backyard. I know Middlebury College does a bit of this activity when they're having for their golf course or for graduation. And sometimes the districts are hired. And I guess the distinction, Senator Pearson, is we don't fund any other pesticide activities. While we permit it, we don't fund them. So this is an activity that is using state dollars or grant match, which can be seen as state dollars to make a pesticide application. And in no other instance are we actually granting dollars to make pesticide applications.
UVM use this in Burlington?
I am not sure because it isn't an activity that's permitted. They could potentially hire a commercial applicator to do this activity, but UVM doesn't have anybody certified themselves to do this activity.
But you can go into most big stores and home and garden stores and buy this stuff right off the shelf.
Yes. Yep.
But if we make this change, it's not actually gonna change the practice, you're saying, or not necessarily, because the adult side's already being applied for with local money.
Correct.
And the active thing is malathion, is the sort of active ingredient.
Did they alternate insecticides between using synthetic pyrethroids and organophosphates? So they'll use sumethrin or pyrethrin and alternate with malathion. One is for cost reasons, the other is resistance management. If you keep applying the same adulticide, eventually you'll have a population of mosquitoes that becomes resistant.
Sure.
And for that reason, they alternate between synthetic pyrethroids and organophosphates. The organophosphates are the particular compound that most folks have concerns with.
And they usually use this, Terry, when the larvicide does not work, or does not work properly or enough, then they go back through with this other product after they hatched and.
So that's how the control plan is written. And that would be utilizing IPM, integrated pest management, as a strategy for controlling mosquitoes. But because this is a municipal activity, if you're having an outdoor activity tomorrow, you can call the control district and have them fog your street. So there's IPM, except it's also done at the request of the folks paying, whose tax dollars pay for the program.
Have you ever visited those areas? Like, how long does this last? Once they go through with the foggers, is that good for a week, a day, or a month?
So it only kills the mosquitoes that have hatched, and it only kills the mosquitoes that fly through the fog. And that fog lasts an hour or so. So it depends on how quickly the mosquitoes are hatching. During the warmer months, you might see a hatch every 96 hours. During the colder months, it might be a hatch every week or 2 weeks. So the answer is it really does depend on how long it lasts based on the hatching cycle of mosquitoes.
What else does the fog take with it?
It's got the potential to kill any insect that flies through the fog. So it is, so it's supposed to be timed where this happens in the twilight hours or the evening when your pollinators have retired for the evening. But it does have the potential to kill any insect that flies. So moths, or any, it's bug spray. It's a lethal bug spray.
How about a kid riding their bike through the fog? How'd that go?
It's unadvisable, but the
Neurological.
yeah. So the organophosphates are, the ones that you hear about that were World War II neurotoxins. So malathion is largely the only one left. We've seen chlorpyrifos go away. Some of the other organophosphates, their registrations have been canceled. There are studies that suggest malathion is not good, but you do need a direct exposure. And this is sort of where you'll get a cholinesterase spike, and then it'll settle down, similar to if you were to pump gas at the gas pump. You're having an exposure. Malathion, you would be having a similar exposure. But the thing about the organophosphates is they don't hang around long in mammals. So if you're exposed, you process that, and it's not like it's going to stay in your system for long. That's partly why they're still around.
How about
What's that?
spiders? Spiders.
Yep, they are insects. Yep.
But we kill the very guys that we depend on to eat our mosquitoes.
They, do they,
I don't know, man. It's hard. The thing is, this is gonna keep going, but whether or not the state is kind of a party to it.
Right.
well,
California, I think, has banned malathion.
No mosquitoes.
Right.
well, I don't know what the fix is. I guess it's either ban it or get the state out of paying, the cost share. But we wouldn't ban the use of it because,
I mean, we could.
yeah. Well, yeah, that would really, then you'd have a mass, you looking to buy a camp cheap or?
All I can
How
say is,
different.
if you were in that area,
No, listen, I know, I
and,
have
and obviously the
lived there,
spiders aren't doing a bang up job at these,
No, listen,
mosquito repellent.
So let's,
They're a little lazy, the spiders.
I mean, that was the one
No,
with
I-
Madeline Cunin, right, with the picture of her.
Right.
yeah, no, it's bad there. It's the wet, sort
Yeah,
of
you
flat,
oughta know.
soggy land throughout
If your
much of the valley.
father-in-law was down there, you must have visited a few times.
I've spent a lot of time there, and it is mosquito-y, for sure.
Yeah.
It's interesting where he is, so they were Bridport. They're apparently just doing the larvicide, and which is not I'm surprised actually that they've done it on their own to learn that, because that's not a progressive area.
Well, yeah, but you've gotta be able to live.
No, but they've stopped doing the adulticide. That's what Terry was saying. So where my stepdad was the chair, and this was going back time, because I remember him telling me about the plane. It was when he was around when they bought the plane from the state, or I don't remember, but it was a lesson for me in local politics. Holy smokes. It was intense. And every time they used to have to come for a direct grant in the big bill, I think, every year. And
Yeah,
he would talk to me like, how do we make this so we don't have to beg every year? So anyway, the evolution is interesting. And in Bridport and that district, they're not doing adulticide. But the mosquitoes are bad. I mean, no question. That's why we do this.
well, I always thought fans kept mosquitoes away.
Good. Yeah, and-
Maybe they ought to put some wind turbines down there.
I don't think that's how those work.
They wouldn't.
Turn them backward.
Throw them into New York.
Well, anything else?
Release the bats, Carrie.
Yeah,
Yes, if we had
How
more
do bats
bats.
do? How do bats do with the fog? They like dusk.
they're not.
Well, bats stay away from fog as much as possible because it affects their navigation. So bats try and stay away from this as much as possible, but it wouldn't. The studies that EPA's done with the wildlife services on endangered species and bats specifically for malathion suggests that there's not an impact. Other people think otherwise. There's a differing opinion there, but the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services has done studies and suggests that malathion and mosquito control will not impact rare, threatened, or endangered species, and they're primarily looking at bats. And I guess their determination was unlikely to affect. So you have there's 4 different determinations: will impact, likely to impact, unlikely to impact, and will not impact. And this is sort of in the middle there, not likely to impact.
Any further questions for Carrie? Carrie, do you have, there's one section in the bill, adulterations. Is there anything in your division where that would have any effect, what's in the bill with you folks that it's your,
No, we already have that provision built into our feed, seed, and fertilizer laws. So the feed program, the adulteration language is there, as well as the fertilizer program. This is 4 other programs in the agency.
yeah, it's for produce, mainly.
Yep.
So you guys aren't affected by that.
No,
And the hemp section, what you have going on in regards to that?
Okay, do that.
so this is a longer tail, but our end goal here is when we built that hemp program, it was primarily to fit into USDA's criteria for diversion or growing cannabis that had more than 0.3% THC, in sort of regulating that activity from a criminal aspect, which is what the USDA law is primarily about, diversion. We also built a consumer protection and quality control aspect to our hemp program that hadn't been done in a hemp program anywhere else. The language in the bill that's in front of you talks about changing a shall to a may. So the agency may have a hemp program. What's gone on and what we hope to do is transfer the consumer protection and quality control piece to the control board. So that section about certifying labs and testing for pesticides and potency and bacterial or fungal contaminants and heavy metals, that section of statute, we will attempt to transfer the control board in S-188, or that you just sent to the House. So we would send the hemp program quality control aspect, quality protection and consumer control piece to the control board with 2 positions. And then the other hemp registration, USDA offers a free registration program for hemp growers. So our folks that are primarily just growing hemp, we would move to a federal program under USDA. And the consumer protection and quality control piece for hemp and hemp infused products would be under the control board, along with all the other products that they're currently making from hemp, the Delta 8, the Delta 9, and Delta 10 THC that they can make from CBD from hemp. And the control board is trying to manage that with a product registration aspect. So the control board would register hemp and not flower, but hemp infused products. And that's in 701 that passed out of both House and Senate recently. So they have a program to support the consumer, or a funding mechanism through product registration to support the consumer protection and quality control piece that currently is under the agency. So that changing that shall to a may will allow us to do all of this.
Okay.
For our farmers that want to continue and shift under a federal registry, can they otherwise continue their current practice?
They can, yes, yep. And it'll be less expensive because the USDA has no registration fee for participating in their program, where ours is, the tiered registration depending on size. But it'll save them about $500 a year for our average size hemp grower.
You don't want to be the czar of hemp anymore.
The main push and impetus behind that hemp program was to establish a solid consumer protection and quality control piece. The diversion aspect was never something that we had as much focus or concern on.
What about the fiber products that can be manufactured? Is anybody at the agency working with anybody to develop a market for the fiber?
Not so much a market, Senator, but we're working through grants and other programs to develop that infrastructure. There is a facility in St. Johnsbury that is hoping to process fiber next year. Most of the folks, primarily all of the folks growing hemp, were growing it for CBD. We had some seed and fiber registrants, but aren't aware of any folks that have harvested for seed or for fiber. Years ago, that was Nataka White's impetus. He started a seed oil press company in Middlebury and had since sold it, but he wanted to grow hemp for seed and press it for hemp oil. His company is gone, but a company in St. Johnsbury is starting up this year, and that's supported in part by the agency to process hemp to use the fiber portion of the plant.
Yeah, did anything ever get going over in Thai? I thought maybe over in Thai, New York, they were gonna try to mix some of the hemp fiber in with the wood pulp. Do you know if that ever got off the ground or?
I was in on the early conversations of discussions about what that would look like or could look like, but I haven't heard from them in a year or two. That was all, those conversations happened pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
And the pandemic put a pretty distinct end to some of the innovation that was happening. Nobody knew where we were headed, and so the markets sort of dried up.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. And in the meantime, the recreational market came on, so.
Right.
Probably sapped some of the motivation. What about our seed program? We worked with you closely on that just a few years ago, and it had some promise. Has any of that borne out?
We do have authority. There are currently 4 institutions in the state that are breeding hemp varieties and using that seed program. We haven't got to the point where we're certifying seed yet, but again, I hate to, when we all sort of 2 years ago now went home during the pandemic, a lot of those conversations about the innovative things that were happening were kind of put on hold, and we went into a sort of let's keep business as usual going as much as possible. We had to recreate a lot of things during that time. How we give pesticide exams, how we certify applicators, how we do trainings took precedent over some of the innovative ideas and new things that we had on the docket.
So that will remain though with you, right?
Yes, it will. Yes, it will.
Some promise there, I should think also. Would your seed program cover high THC cannabis seed as well?
Currently, no, because it's
Okay.
specific to hemp, whereas the Consumer Protection and Quality Control, the Cannabis Quality Control Program, is for hemp and hemp infused products and cannabis infused products. So that piece of statute is for both, whereas the seed is just for hemp. As time goes on and restrictions lessen, it will be a very good template for breeders of high THC cannabis seed.
Yeah,
And
I
that can happen either under the agency or under the control board as folks see fit.
saw in the headline that the U.S. House is maybe this week considering a bill to deschedule. So
That
I don't know
would
what
be
the-
helpful because right now our general counsel is very risk averse and is concerned with the Drug Place Work Act and any agency employees handling high THC cannabis at all. So certifying seeds under the current paradigm would be a stretch for the agency. And this is where I was sort of mentioning being risk averse or not.
Does that testing take place at the Randolph lab?
Some of it certainly does, yes.
Next week, we're supposed to be going down there for a walk
Oh, is that
through
right?
and a visit.
Yeah.
And
Good times.
do you have anything to do with that lab, Carrie, or?
Yes, the lab is the foundation of all of my programs, Senator. The pesticide program, the feed, seed, and fertilizer programs are all based on sort of trust but verify. Whenever we do a pesticide drift investigation, the samples go to the lab. The pesticide groundwater monitoring program is probably the largest customer of the lab. We send a lot of water samples in for pesticide analysis. All the fertilizer consumer protection program, if you order a lot of fertilizer and we test it, we make sure you're getting what you're paid for, what you've paid for. If not, you're reimbursed double what you were shorted by the fertilizer dealer. And there's also penalties for feed not being up to what the label guarantee allows for, and all that testing happens on the first floor of the lab, or second floor, the floor you walk in on. where the actual lab is. The testing happens upstairs. The downstairs is largely tenants.
Yeah.
Of other agencies, our agency as well, but less analytical activity happens downstairs.
Do you go down there often or not?
So prior to the pandemic, when we were in the office, I was down there once or twice a week. I honestly, I was down there, twice so far this year.
Yeah. Well, is there someone there that's gonna be able to explain, the processes that they perform in different sections, next
Absolutely.
week when we go down?
Absolutely. Rebecca, she's the current director of the lab. She will be moving on shortly, but she knows all the activities that go on in the lab.
Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Carrie, will we have to wear a mask?
So that restriction has been lifted on all state buildings.
Thank you. That's enough. Thank you. That's all I wanted to know.
Holy smoke. So is there anything else on the hemp that you need to report to us on, Carrie?
No, but just be ready. S-188 will look a little different when it comes back to you, Senator.
188.
Oh, it's one of Kerry's, sandbox bills. He gets us, he hooks us, and then he just lets the reel go, and then the house nets it, and I don't know why we meet. Just hand it over to Kerry.
So what'd you do to that?
You'll see, hopefully you'll see, depending on testimony, you'll see the consumer protection, the cannabis quality control part of the hemp statute moved under the control board, just so there's one umbrella for cannabis regulation in the state as opposed to multiple.
Any other questions? So that does it for you and the bill, Carrie?
Largely yes.
Well, I guess there are no other questions, right now from the committee in regards to that. So, we'll excuse you and thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thanks, Carrie.
You're welcome. Thank you. I was going to come down, but everybody thought sugaring was over, but we had the best run we've had in years over the last 2 days. So I'm gonna take off my coat and tie and head to the sugar house.
Well, they claim that it's gonna get down in value, so us poor folks can buy some maybe this year.
Well, we'll see.
You're struggling to afford it, have you, Mr.
What
Chair?
are you laughing about? Thank you, Gary.
You're welcome.
I didn't have anything else on.
No, that's it.
on
I wonder if he's gonna join us. What day are we going?
Wednesday.
Wednesday. Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, is that true? So will we be here back by lunchtime?
Yes,
yeah,
Okay.
should be back by
you'll leave it
quarter,
right at 9.
11:30 or
It's
quarter.
about a 45-minute drive.
Okay.
Randall Center.
Get us a van there, Mr. Chair?
We tried,
Well,
we looked into it, but
That's
it's
true.
just,
It was
costs a
gone.
lot.
I'm happy to drive. I could back in my car fit a bunch of us.
Well, I got, my car.
And then we'll have what, an hour and a half
An
down
hour
there?
and a half to tour, and then you'll leave at 11:15 and be
See
done
you
by
going.
noon.
Good.
You're gonna make the trip, right, Anthony?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. That'd be good to see.
Yeah, I've never been.
Um, Well, anything else that you guys wanna bring up? No?
Well, I'm wondering what these are.
Yeah.
I think there's chocolate involved.
I'd try one, let us know if they're safe to eat and
Yeah,
I'll
we
say
won't
one
tell
for-
Campion it was you.
I
It's
don't
quite a
think
box.
he counts
It's like an
them.
optical illusion box.
No, he wouldn't count, he can't count that high anyways, take one.
We're still.
We're still on Zoom, right?
Yep.
So the whole world knows
Yeah,
how Campion can.
Yeah, you know,
count.
here we use his room.
Yeah.
Should be
And
a little.
he even offered it next year.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
And I
he
said,
that.
well, how do you know you're even gonna be here next year?
Please, that guy's in the Bennington Banner more often than anybody, haven't you heard?
Well, I didn't accuse him of that, but Senator Sears tells
Yeah,
us
no,
every
I
day.
know, I know. And he
Well,
tells
I think,
judiciary.
Did you ready to go
so,
out?
yeah, we'll move to,